Coach Steve, thanks for joining in. We would love to have you in our knowledge series, what we call it as Insights from Sports Industry Experts. So we are talking to many of the sports industry experts who have done a lot in this industry, and we would like to pick up some of their experiences and knowledge and take it to our fans who would love to understand what really goes behind in a game of a football, right? So as you know, you're being one who have been a great experience across working in different markets all through, right? So I want to understand your journey from being a coach in UK and then coming into your first plunge in the Asian market, and how it really happened. I just want to understand your journey from being a coach, working in UK, and then taking the first plunge to coming into the Asian market.
Okay, I mean, I believe there's a great deal of right place, right time, and also who you know involved in sport, especially football. And I had been a player, but not very good. That's being honest. I wasn't a great player. While I was playing, I trained as a phys ed teacher because that was like the next step. I realised that I wasn't going to be a star. I better get something behind me. So I did that, and I'd been teaching for about 2-3 months in England after doing my degree. I went to Carnegie College, PE College, and I got a phone call. Do you want to go to Bahrain? Okay. And I didn't discuss money. I said yes was the answer. It was a full-time coaching position. I was going out as a player coach and working with the national team at times. So I went out there, and that was the right place, the right time. A fellow called Merv Beck got me the chance, and I worked under a coach called Jack Mansell, and that opened the door. After spending about a year there, I took all the appropriate coaching badges. They call it the English full badge. It was called, or the full license, like an A license now. Yeah. Took that, and then it just went from there. And whatever there was a contract, I sort of went and just tried to enjoy myself, because my view is if you wake up every morning wanting to go to work, you're lucky. And so far, I have been. I went to Bahrain, then obviously in Australia for a long time, Fiji, worked in Malaysia 3 times, Vietnam, Singapore, Thailand, Laos with the national team, Thailand with the national team, and 4 times to India in different capacities in India. Fascinating place. And so, I've got to be honest, I feel as though I've been very, very lucky, worked hard, but also have been lucky as well.
All right, that's great, perfect. So Coach, what age, how old were you when you went to Bahrain, the first assignment for you?
I was the ripe old age of 24.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, again, as you say, I started early. Mainly because I think I wasn't good enough to make a good living out of football. I played semi-pro, I played professional in other countries, I'd been to USA and played and all that. But I actually started to realise that I was going to be a better coach than I was going to be a player, because while I was playing, I was questioning some of the coaching I was having. Not publicly questioning it, because you don't do that, you get slaughtered. But internally, I was thinking, I don't think that's right, or I could do this better, or why are they doing this? Like, I was at one club and I was a goalkeeper, and all I was doing was running. Now, there's no point in running, for a goalkeeper, really. Okay, it's basic level of fitness, but I was doing cross-country runs pre-season, and it really was totally unrealistic. No skill level to what I was going to do as a player, and I was getting things like a ball. I always remember a ball going past me one day into the net, and I got the phrase, turn around, the centre half said, "You should have saved that." Well, I know, but I want to know how should I saved it. So I was starting to see, and when I went to PE college, the lecturer opened my eyes. He taught me what coaching was, and I realised, yes, there is an element of what happens and how can you help people get better. And that to me is coaching, is helping people get better, and of course making your team win. And if your team wins, you've got a chance. If your team loses, you ain't got a chance.
Yeah, perfect. Coach, so I think you took the plunge. It's not very easy. You took the risk of coming down to Asia, and you've seen a major milestones which you have achieved. I think you've gone ahead and won many cups and leagues for them, and you've been a great success in India. Sorry, in India, plus along with the Asian market. So when it comes to considering the coaching and being a technical director, you have done multiple hats, multiple roles. So how does it really make a difference when you're coming from a coaching perspective and having a different hat of a technical director?
Well, coaching is easier to define. It's basically being in charge of the team, either improving a player or improving the team, making it win. I still honestly don't know what a technical director does.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone knows, because everywhere it's different. I was technical director for Thailand. To an extent, I was technical director in Australia. In Australia, I was looking at the grassroots level, working at coaching courses for them, writing books, making videos. In Thailand, it was more looking at the academy, setting up a national academy. In Laos, it was the coach education program. So every country has a different requirement for the TD. And I don't think anybody really knows what it is. I mean, the most important thing is that a TD, I think, has to support the coach who is the national coach, if it's at a national level. And if it's at a club level, he has to support the club coach. There's nothing worse a club coach or national coach looking over his shoulder at the TD. You don't need that. So whenever I hear about a TD, you've got to think, well, it's got to be specific to the country or the club's needs.
Okay. All right. So it has to be specific to the country, what their objectives and missions are, and based on that, a technical TD can work upon that.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If you're TD for India, you're TD for 22 different countries, aren't you? It's that big. If you're TD for Laos, you can go everywhere, or Singapore, and you can go everywhere within an hour. So there are different roles based on the size of the country, the wealth of the country, the facilities of the country, the culture of the country. I mean, you have to also apply yourself to the culture. I think the worst thing you can be as a foreigner is be colonial, go in there and say, we do this. Well, it doesn't matter what we do. I am in that country. I am a guest of that country. I've got to adapt to what that country wants, I think it needs. I've got to inquire if what I think it needs is what the country wants and needs, then we can start working. I think it's crazy when I see the colonials come in. I don't just mean the English, I mean Brazilians, Germans, whoever, and they don't last long. If you come in saying, this is how we do it, you won't be there very long. You've got to learn to adapt and find out what the country wants.
Yeah, right. Perfect. So, Coach, you've seen a long-lasting career for close to 3-4 decades now in coaching and being a technical director. So people talk about this modern football, how football is changing, how it has evolved. So now, can you just speak about how the football has evolved for you from your playing and coaching careers, and now what you see as a pundit and trying to analyze a lot of games for you, for the fans? How football has evolved from your perspective?
Well, I think the two simplest things are the quality of the pitches. If you look at the EPL, they're like bowling greens. They're like cricket pitches, really. That makes a massive difference to the game. The quality of the ball is lighter, better ball. The boots, in terms of those things are easily tangible things that have definitely improved for the better. The game is faster. No matter what you say, it's physically a better game. They're all athletes now. There's no players now with a big fat stomach who stroll around in midfield. They don't survive. And that, in a sense, as well, has made the game change, because we have nostalgia where we say, oh, that player was great on the ball, they could do everything. Well, they probably were great on the ball because they had more time. Now you don't get time on the ball because some young athlete is coming to clatter you if you don't, if you take more than 2 touches. Most of the top level now is 1 touch and 2 touch. Very rare that a player takes more than that. And that's because they're closed down by great athletes. So that's where the game's changed, I think. Physically, the game has changed. Tactically, what was happening in the 70s, 60s, 70s, It's the same now. People talk about pressing and gegen pressing. Well, Liverpool were doing that in the 70s, and the 80s. So don't let anyone kid yourself about that. To me, the biggest tactical change was the back pass to the goalkeeper, eliminating that. That did change the game. That changed what happened, because before you could literally steal time, change everything, but now you can't. That was to me a major change. I haven't seen many major changes since that in terms of tactics. And later we talk about analysis. Some of the absolute fiction I read in some of the analysis stuff is incredible. The structure of the game. Might have been a big change in '53 when Hungary beat England 6-3 and 7-1. That was a change. They had a withdrawn centre forward. Occasional things happen like that, but overall I'd say no great tactical shifts, more physical shifts, and with the physical shift you get improved technique. Now that helps with the ball. I mean, you can bend the modern day ball better than you could play with the ball in the 70s. You can pass a ball better on the floor when it's like a cricket pitch, not when it's like a beach, and your ankles in mud. So those things change. And also what I think to an extent has changed is the refereeing. Not allowing the tackle from behind has made a big difference. I mean, people say who's better, Messi or Maradona? Well, I always go for Maradona, because Maradona was kicked all over the park and was battered by defenders, particularly in Italy, whereas Messi is still a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, but he's protected. He's on a great pitch and he's protected. He doesn't get clattered through the back anymore like Maradona did. You watch some of the old stuff of Maradona, how he survived physically is a miracle. And I don't know if Messi would have survived, because he's strong, but he's not a huge monster. Whereas, Diego was physically strong. Ronaldo is strong. He's done a marvelous job on himself physically. You can see that. You don't get a body like Ronaldo's through luck. That comes from hard work and good nutrition. A bit like yours.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, Coach, great about, so you've seen in the modern football, a lot of technology has been in use right now, with VAR coming in, even for the fitness, a lot of GPS wearable devices has come in. Video technology has become a lot more in terms of giving you real-time data, the match analysis. So how do you see that being the shift happening in the modern day football, let's say in UK, and how do you see that happening in the Asian market as well with your experiences?
Well, I think there's been a huge leaps forward in terms of analysis of games. I'm a big believer in match analysis, because I started doing it in mid-90s, probably before most of your listeners were born. And I used things like VHS tapes and a pencil and a pen and a paper, which the lads nowadays would laugh at. But the reason I started was I was coaching goalkeepers, national team goalkeepers in Australia. And I thought, well, why do we do this practice? Is it realistic? I thought, well, how are goals scored? How are shots on target? If I can replicate that in training, therefore, it's better for me goalkeepers. So I did that. I analysed where goals came from. And then I suddenly realised that if this practice for goalkeepers is also going to be very good for strikers, because they're practicing how goals are going to be coming. And I basically found what happened then still happens now. 80% of goals come from inside the penalty box. They're one touch or two touch. It's very, very rare. There's always going to be freak goals from outside the pitch or great dribbles. That happens, but the bread and butter of football is that 35 to 40% of goals come from set pieces. So I worked out thinking, well, what can you do? So I thought all my practices were involved with inside the penalty box, one touch and two touch for the striker. The goalkeeper had to react to that. And I realized as I became more, rather than coaching keepers, coaching the team, that you've got to get as many players into the box as you can. You've got to get the ball into the box as often as you can, and vice versa. Keep the ball out of your box. That's closing down people crossing the ball is such a magnificent skill which doesn't get talked about a lot. If you watch the teams, oh, they got the ball in the box, the player was unmarked. Yeah, well, if you can stop the cross coming in, you stop it happening anyway. So I think that's really important. I watched Man City against Southampton recently, and the left back from Man City pouring balls in. The Southampton defenders were fantastic. They were getting the clearances, but if they could have stopped the crosses, it would have reduced, the pressure on them. So, I think that was really important. But as it's evolved, though, what I've found is that it's become too complicated, and I found there's been an over-analysis. And I had a wonderful phrase: paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
Because I've had stuff sent to me which is totally unusable. Now, as a coach, there's only so much things I can use, and I don't want to be baffled. With some of the phrases, the half space and vertical penetration. There's a whole vocabulary come up, which is some totally irrelevant, and I don't have the time. I remember a game I was coaching at Laos in the World Cup qualifiers against Korea, and I got a report given to me by a company that wanted me to end up buying analysis, and it was 28 pages. Yeah. Now, I didn't have time to read 28 pages because I had another game coming up quick, and some of it was just, and in the end, the analyst who'd done it off a computer wasn't at the game, said our game plan had failed. Well, our game plan didn't fail. We didn't have a game plan because Korea were better than us. They were physically better. They were technically better. They were better footballers. We just hung on. And he said, like, we didn't do this when we had the ball. We were delighted when we got the ball. Australia didn't get the ball. Their keeper never touched the ball till the 28th minute, because we never got the ball. We were hanging on by our fingernails. We were physically breathing our guts out. I was delighted that we kept the score down to about 3 after 60 minutes. I knew after 60 minutes we were going to die because we were up against lads who were playing in the EPL, the Bundesliga, the Chinese league, and our lads were semi-pros from the Lao League. So we physically couldn't have handled it. So, and this bloke's telling me my game plan didn't work. Well, he's got to be realistic about what you can do as a coach. And some of the technical things he talked about were absolute fiction. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. It didn't happen. And so what I wanted, when I send an analyst out, I want to know, to scout a team really, or a player, but when I scout a team, I want them to know the shape of the team, what they're playing. Are they playing 4-4-2, 3-5-2? I want to know their set pieces, because 40% from them. Do they do any special set pieces? Are they good players in it? Are there any particular star players? Usually you know that anyway. And are there any general patterns of play? Like I coached a game, I coached Thailand against Saudi, and I spoke with Peter Reid, who was our manager, and I said to him, they will play a box midfield, which was basically 4-2-2-2. Yeah. And so the key will be, we've got to stop their fullbacks, because if we stop their fullbacks, they'll have no width. They'll just be clogged up down the middle, and we'll have a chance. And we did that. We played a 4-4-2, and we had our wide midfielders pushing on to their fullbacks, and that stopped their fullbacks getting that. Now we got beat 2-0 because they were better than us, but it kept it realistic, and we were in with a chance. Right. In a sense, just doing something slightly tactical, not major complexity, just a small tactical switch. Rather than the midfielders dropping into midfield, they pushed right up. It was almost became a 4-2-4 in a sense, and that allowed us to get away, with a good result. So that's what I want from the analyst. I want useful information, stuff that I can, is a player all left foot? We saw the other day, Yarmolenko scored for West Ham against Chelsea. Now, Chelsea I'm sure their analysts have done their homework, that he's all left-footed. So you push the guy down, he's on the right-hand side, you've got to push him down the right wing, not let him come inside and shoot. And Rudiger did the opposite. He almost allowed him inside. And that to me is somebody who either hasn't listened to the analyst or the analyst hasn't done his job.
Not picked up. Yeah. That's
So
great.
that to me is where the game has changed. There's better analysis. The use of computers obviously is great. The distance people run, that's important as well, I think. Though the trade-off is, are they running sensibly? That's the next thing. If you run 12 kilometers or 7, are they a quality 7? Better than a pointless 12. Possession, I mean, all the possession points to not very much to be honest, because if you look at Barcelona, well, yes, they have great possession because most teams drop off. So they keep the ball and they're pinging about in their own back third, even in the middle third. So they gain great percentage on possession, but it's not important. To me, the important possession is in their final third. That's important. And I recently read, like, Bruno Fernandes of Man United. He was criticised for his possession because his pass rate wasn't that good. Well, the reason his passing rate wasn't that good because he tries something special. He tries great through balls, dangerous through balls, which sometimes get put off by good defenders, rather than someone who plays at the back and knocks it around like Piqué, Ramos, can't blame them. So your possession has got to be quality possession, what you do with the possession and where you do it. That's the important thing. How you interpret possession is, I think, a key. An analyst can give me certain facts and figures, but a quality analyst will tell me when that possession is useful.
Okay, perfect, coach. I think you well put it up. Many times we go overboard in trying to get more information, but what is important is to get the right information. It's going to be useful for the coach, if I put that in the right way.
Because basically, I get sacked, you don't. That's being quite blunt. The analyst stays there because he's paid by the club. But if they lose, it's the coach's fault, and I'm the one that gets sacked. So that's welcome to the real world of football. That's what it is, the real world.
That's true. That's true, coach. Coach, if you've seen, you spoke about the analyst and you spoke how the markets in UK and even in Asia. So when did you first start getting an analyst support, or when you went in? I mean, how is the current market in the Asian market, where the teams are able to have an analyst, provide that to the coaches, compared to maybe in UK, there would be a team of analysts who might be working on opponent scouting, someone else could be working on the post-match analysis. But with your expertise, what is that trends have you seen in the markets, in the Asian market, how things have opened up?
Okay, well, I've been in Asia since, if you count Australia as Asia, since 1980. If you count not Australia, since 1998, I went to Malaysia. The first analyst I had is basically the bloke I'm looking at, you.
Okay.
Because that was the first time we had an analyst. Now, that was at Mumbai City FC in the ISL, who were a forward-thinking club who did everything properly, I felt. They were an excellent club. Now, Peter Reid had analysts before in England because, I mean, the bottom line, it comes down to money. What budget has the club got? Now, I've got, if I have a budget and I have X dollars, do I have an analyst, or can I buy a better goalkeeper or a better striker? And I'll be honest, I'll go for the striker or the goalkeeper before an analyst. Not against them, but I know which one's going to keep me in my job. In the short term, coaching is short term. It's not long term. It's so hard to get a long term. I've survived 3 years in a few jobs, and that's long service league in Asia. Particularly 3 years is long. So it's up to a club, I think, to employ analysts, because that is a long-term position, and that analyst should be based and belong to the club as opposed to belonging to the coach. They should work together, but in terms of that, so in Asia, like, I didn't have an analyst in Laos national team or Thailand. Just didn't have it, couldn't afford it. That was somebody, I had a physical trainer because I could afford that, but I couldn't afford an analyst. I couldn't find one in Lao, that's being perfectly honest. I had to use outsourcing things. Mumbai, they supplied one. Fantastic. I coached in the I-League with Mohammed Gan. Didn't have one there. That's a different story altogether, though. I can talk about India later if you want. But Mumbai did everything right. And we benefited from some of the, and especially in the ISL, where basically we were playing, traveling, resting. You didn't have a chance to do anything. So coaches needed the work of the analyst. And we got some, I've still got all your stuff, by the way. I keep everything.
That was my first, experience in ISL. Prior to that, working with Ashley Westwood at BFC. But then, coach, the way it has changed, if you see right now, I think, again, you've seen being part of ISL in different roles as well. Now, every team, if you look at the Indian market right now in ISL, every team has got an analyst, a must-have. I'm not sure if it's an AFC rule or not. And they also got an analyst for the reserve team as well, and academies. That some teams have gone ahead and have made like a 5-member analytical team, which can help on scouting, churning out data, a lot more. I mean, that's how things have evolved in India so far. But yes, not the bigger market is still trying to identify what is the value they're going to get from this.
Yeah, I think the word is value, and basically it's value for money. If you've got the money, it's nice to have an analyst. If you haven't got the money, okay, and it's not an AFC rule, I'm certain. I think the only AFC rules are licenses for coaches, and also I think physical trainers. That's starting to, and I would add, I think they should have licenses for physiotherapists, because I think like at Mumbai we had proper physiotherapists. When I went to Mohan, I didn't have a qualified physio. I had to bring one in. The physio, the quote physio, he was a lovely guy, but he had no qualifications.
Understood.
It's so important that you get recovery programs and players get back on the pitch quicker. That's so important. So I think it's that is important.
So coming to now, coach, you've seen the way the Indian market and the way it has been implemented across. And I think you told me that the first analyst you had was in Mumbai City. Plus, I also remember one thing you said. This was the biggest support team you had, when you came to Mumbai. The biggest support team.
Absolutely. We had in Thailand the national team, 5 of us. Lao, it was 4 of us. Because of money again. So Mumbai, we had about 12, which was the right way. And you go to look at Liverpool, Man City. You're looking at almost 30 odd staff, well, minimum of 30 staff. So anything that improves performance on the pitch, I support. And that is, to me, is only limited by the money. Because whether anyone believes you or not, but the game is a business. It revolves around the money, and there's politics involved as well. You got to realize that, because the politics often get you the money. You mentioned scouting. I mean, that is what I look for in a player when I've done some scouting is I look at 3 things. I look at, I'll say talent. That's the thing. Can he play? That's the first thing. Have they got a good first touch? Have they got a good body position? Because if you haven't got a good first touch, you don't get a second touch. So little things like that. Are they quick? A player has to be quick these days. Sadly, you can have a good schoolboy footballer, but he can't make the step up to pro because he's just not quick enough. And I've seen some talented boys who are not quick. Now, the third one is the important one, attitude. I've seen talented, quick boys not make it because of their attitude. You've got to love the game. You've got to be a good pro. You've got to look after your lifestyle. The chances of you making it now, smoking and drinking, eating the wrong food, are tiny. You might get the odd freak, you might, but the odds are you're not going to get it. So you've got to put everything in your favor. As if you're a young Indian player watching this, do the right thing. Chetri is smart. Baichung Bhutia is smart. Renedy Singh, Gumange, Sandesh. They are players who are talented, obviously. They wouldn't get where they are. They've all got pace, but they're all smart lads. They look after themselves off the pitch. And that is so important, because we all know there'll be lads who are good Indian players who haven't looked after themselves off the pitch. They don't last long. That's the real world, you know. You get a goalkeeper like Subrata Paul, dedicated like mad, you know, and he's made because he's worked hard. He's a good goalkeeper, but super fit and works hard, loves the game. So that's got to be, to me, you know, what you've got to look at if you're going to be I'm scouting for a player, and that's what the player's got to be.
Right. Coach, from a scouting perspective, now we have seen that there are a lot of data or stats which is being used to scout a talent, right? You know, you might look at some 500 player or 100 players and try to filter them and say, these are the metrics in which he's good at. Is he a great striker, or maybe a great midfielder who can actually play in both the positions? So now the other set of scouting is more, let's say, subjective, the talent, or you know, some of the other parameters. So how do you put an objective way in order to say, you know, the way a talent for you would be different from a talent for me, you know, with the expertise coming into picture. So is there a quantified information using data which works?
Yeah, I think, you know, what you've got to remember is that the majority of coaches are not highly educated. That's not being snobbish or brutal. It's the real world, because they've been either footballers and they haven't got degrees. So you've just used two words there: data analysis and metrics. Now, not many coaches know. It's starting to change, let's be honest. But I know, for example, like Klopp, he's got a degree in sports science, so he accepts the knowledge, and he's actually got an astrophysicist on his staff. So, you know, you're going to have, but that astrophysicist, he has got to translate into, I'd say, he's got to make his vocabulary far more. That's for a guy as well who's got a degree. So there are going to be coaches who don't have degrees, and they don't want to hear metrics. They want to know how far he ran, how many times he's given the ball away. So the analyst, to me, has got to translate into a working man's or a football man's, person these days, a football person's vocabulary. That's so important, because if you scare the coach off, he won't want the information. You know, it'll become laughed at. You've got to have, so he's got to use the proper vocabulary thing from an analyst. You know, he's got to translate that knowledge they have, which is valuable. How can you make that knowledge of value to the coach?
Yeah, perfect. So, Coach, I think I've got last couple of questions, and before we wind up, I think your inputs, you as a coach, what do your comments and suggestions for the upcoming analyst who wants to take up football analysis as a career? So if any 3 or 4 points which you want to tell them, that what would make them as a great analyst if they want to enter in the industry?
In terms of analyst, the first thing I'd say is play as much as you can. Because if you play as much as you can, you get to understand the game. You start to see things as the player or the coach sees things. Watching it from a computer is so much different from watching it on the sideline and from watching it inside the pitch. So play, that's the most important thing. Actually go out and have a go at coaching kids as well, and see if they can do what you're trying to tell them, because that's what's going to happen. Your information has got to be translatable onto the pitch. So play and coach, that's the important thing. Now, also, they've got to learn to manage upwards. And this applies both to an analyst and a coach. You've got to remember that somebody somewhere pays your wages. You know, and if you're living, you've got to keep your wages coming in, because you've got a mortgage, or you've got to buy a car, or you've got a mother-in-law nagging you. So you've got to basically learn to manage upwards and adapt within the culture you are. You've got to be your own person, but you've got to adapt to the culture. In the analyst case, you've got to give the coach what he wants. And if the coach is happy, the bosses upstairs will be happy, because he's got to manage, you know. And not so much the analyst in this case, but the I advise young coaches, you've now got to manage upwards, but they've also got to manage the media and manage the social media in particular. Somewhere like India, where Facebook is incredible. You've got to learn to manage what goes on. Not so much for the analyst. The analyst is often invisible man.
Yeah.
I don't know who Liverpool's analysts are,
Yeah.
but they're obviously doing a fantastic job. Now,
Correct.
I've even looked and read about them. And, you can't put a face. They could walk past me in the streets in Liverpool. Klopp can't walk down the street. Sadio Mane can't. Virgil van Dijk can't. But some of the blokes who are behind the other success story can go anywhere they want because no one knows them. But they're doing a great job. Now, I tell this to coaches. The most important thing, forget this word philosophy, forget the word project. There's only one word that matters, particularly in Asia, and that's win.
Yeah.
Because if you win, you're coaching next week. If you lose 3 in a row, you're not there. Somebody else is doing the coaching. So you have to win to be able to do what you think is right. And if the analyst helps the coach win, the analyst will keep his job as well. Because if the coach starts getting rubbish from the analyst, he'll start saying, hey, he told me that, because he's got to protect himself. So that it might not be nice, but it's called political reality, of football reality. You've got to survive in your job. There's very few people, survive all the time. The coaching dropout rate is horrendous. I feel privileged to have been coaching for about 40 odd years. I've been lucky, and there's been luck involved, but a lot of people don't get that luck, and you can be doing a really good job, then lose, and you might not get back in the system again. There's some good coaches inside India. I've heard. There's also some con men. Let's be honest. There's some con men who have kept their jobs, maybe because they manage upwards better, or they manage the media better than some of the more coaches. So that goes on. So that would be my advice to the analyst. Keep your information practical. Give the coach what he wants. Help the coach win. If he wins, you'll win as well.
Perfect, Coach. I think that wraps everything over there. Thanks, Coach. Thanks for joining in. Love chatting with you. It's been a long time. I really enjoyed working with you and still continuing this relationship, on and off, where you've been helping us out with a lot of content, communication. I'm very thankful for that, Coach. And I look forward to continuing with this.
I've actually just sent you an email today as well about the physical improvements in women's football.
Yeah. I'll see that. All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
mate.
Coach. I'll
No
see you in
problem.
touch.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.